I'm Megan Trezza, founder of La Jolla Learning Works, and today I want to talk to you guys about vocabulary instruction. So we're going to talk about why vocabulary first. When we're working with students who struggle with reading, it's really important to do vocabulary instruction to support their growth and their reading levels. A couple reasons for that. For students who struggle with decoding, those kids usually haven't done a lot of reading or as much reading as their same grade level peers that are stronger readers. So they've missed out on exposure to text where they can learn new words and recognize them in print. So we have to double up on it so that they're making sure that they get the growth that they need to enhance not just their decoding skills, but also their overall reading level. For students who struggle with comprehension, the challenge can be that they don't understand the words themselves, and not understanding bigger words will limit their ability to understand higher level text. So those are the key reasons why we focus on vocabulary instruction. The purpose of our vocabulary instruction at La Jolla Learning Works has a couple different points here, but one is that we really aim to improve students' conceptual understanding of those words. And this differs from a lot of the work that students do in school, where they're just memorizing a word and its definition, and they're unable to apply that meaning in context or to use the word on their own, in whether that's in oral language or in writing. So the other piece is that we're going to teach them some important study skills that they can really use across the grade levels. We say like 5th grade through 12th grade. It could be a little bit earlier, just depending on whether or not that student is pretty independent in these skills. But these are really strategies that can be generalized, up to studying for the LSATs or a GRE. So let's get into it a little bit here. We're going to start with vocabulary cartoons. And these are basically kind of capitalizing on the theory of our VV program that when you connect words with pictures, you really cement the understanding. And so in our vocabulary cartoon exercises, it's pretty simple. It can be a lot of fun. And typically as students go through and just create the vocabulary cartoons, they're cementing their memory and understanding of those words just in that process. So we're really talking about a lasting conceptual understanding of the words. So let's talk about how to do vocabulary cartoons. So first of all, the things that you're going to need, it's pretty simple. In the office, we have these spiral bound notebooks. Top bound is important, and a pencil and some words. That's really all that you need. We are working on creating a La Jolla Learning Works kind of branded notebook that would have a template already created in it. So you may see those coming up. If not, these will be accessible in the office, and you can always get these for your students if you need them. So how do we do it? So step one, we need to figure out where do we find the words. So you have lots of resources, especially if you're working with students on reading comprehension, and if you're doing decoding, you're going to see lots of words that are coming up in your exercises. So you can find them in the visualizing and verbalizing passages. You can get them from any homework materials if you're doing academic coaching with students. And you can also find some grade level vocabulary lists in our resources. We're still kind of working on those right now. We will be putting those together, so they'll be in the instruction folder on your box file on every computer workstation in our tutoring centers. So if you need any help finding anything, just check in with your supervisor and they'll be sure to direct you towards resources you need. So once we have some words, let's talk about making the vocabulary cartoons. So basically, you're going to take the notebook, and I've made a little demo page here. So you're going to want to show the demo page to the student, and actually I would say make it with them. So this is what it's going to look like when it's done, but I'll show you how I'm going to make it. And can we see there? Get a little close up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show the student the whole process so that they understand how simple it is for them to do this at home, or with any little notebook that they have. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of our templates, but it can be just a line at the bottom, and I like to think of 2 spaces, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that much. Just a small space at the bottom, then a larger space, and then you're going to divide into 2 other smaller spaces. So there you have it, pretty simple. You're going to show the student that the word goes on the bottom, their picture, or you can say illustration, goes in the middle, and you might just draw something so that they, can remember that that's what that's for. And then a sentence is going to go here, and then they're going to put the definition of the word at the top, and we like to include synonyms. So a couple key notes while you're doing these. The word, obviously, that's just going to come straight from the material that you have. You may have the student write the part of speech if it's a word that can be used in different parts of speech. And then thinking about the pictures, you want to make sure that the student's making an illustration that really captures the meaning of the word. And this is where the Socratic conversation is going to come into place, where you're discussing with the student, what do you really picture when you think of the meaning of that word? Whether, maybe the word is juggle, but you're talking about it in a context of maybe juggling tasks and things to do. So maybe you show a person and they're throwing up a computer, they're throwing up a cell phone, they're throwing up a pencil in the air, and you draw all those different things. So really think about, what's the complexity that you want to convey through that image, so it's not too simple, and it really, captures the concept that you want the student to understand. And then when they write their sentence, same thing. The sentence should explain the meaning of the word. It shouldn't just say, if the word is to juggle, I like to juggle, but it could say, I feel really stressed when I have to juggle a lot of activities. And then lastly, with the synonyms, just thinking that if a student has a really lengthy definition, it's harder to remember. So if you can come up with a single word or a couple different single words that will remind them, that's a lot easier for them to recall. And likely that they might find some words in, print somewhere that they can easily associate and connect back with that, deep conceptual understanding you created through the picture and the sentence later on. So that's the method for the vocabulary under the vocabulary cartoons. And like I said up here, just always make the demo page with the student, and then you'll go through and make some of the exercises in your sessions with them. And always just remember you're working from the top to the bottom. And then the last thing is that once you have these created, or the students created them for homework, you can use it as a study tool. So this is pretty cool. I like to show the students that the whole point is that they can go back and do the review on their own. So if they're looking at this, they would start with pulling up the top page so that it's covering up all their hints, and they just look at the word. And so when they see that word, we talked about juggle, so if you see juggle, then you're thinking, what does juggle mean? Let me see if I can remember it. Then maybe you do remember it, and you look at your picture and you go, yeah, that's what I remember, throwing those things up in the air. You can read the sentence for a reminder, double check your synonyms, and it's a great tool that you can use together, or the student can do independently. So that's the process and the whole method of vocabulary cartoons. When we're thinking about the application for vocabulary cartoons, you can collect words from a lot of different resources. If you're doing reading comprehension, we have our Einsteins and our visualizing and verbalizing materials. It's really helpful to teach students to preview the material just by scanning ahead to see if there are any words that look big and important. But a lot of these curriculums actually pull the words out in advance. So you're going to have a little vocabulary, kind of key in the VV passages, and in the Einstein's book, you'll see them at the end of each passage where it pulls out vocabulary words. So always start with those so that students learn that it's important to begin with vocabulary before you jump into reading comprehension exercises. And then thinking about our reading, decoding, and fluency exercises and programs, you can find words in fluency passages, maybe within the word lists themselves, and any other reading exercises that the students encountered in that decoding program. And then academic coaching or executive functioning, where you see students bringing in homework assignments and things they need to work on. Again, just any material that they have where there's a word that they don't understand, but also thinking that it's important with these programs to directly teach the student these skills so that they have effective study methods to make the most out of their study time, just knowing that vocabulary is that foundation for learning across all content areas. So that's a wrap on vocabulary cartoons. Let's talk about our second method, which is the word webs. So our word webs The purpose here is to help students again with conceptual understanding, reasoning skills, and to kind of move away from that rote memorization of a single word's meaning, but to be able to teach them these word parts that then can help them understand vocabulary words on a much larger scale. So if you know one root word, it might help you with 10 or 20 other words versus just studying one word and that's the one word that you know. So let's talk about the process for the word webs. First of all, your materials that you're going to need. So you will find these materials, these are the handouts. You'll find them in our instruction files under vocabulary word part exercises. The first thing you're going to find, you'll have the word part index, and this is the list of all of the different word parts and their meanings. They're just alphabetized, so the student has to kind of use their dictionary skills that are probably rusty these days with all of our online tools, but help them find the right word and meaning. And then we have our word part exercises that are all grouped together. So you have 12 groups of these exercises. And then we have our word web template. So this is what they're going to be using to actually make what we call the word web. This is actually the word web here, this illustration. So let's talk about how you do it. I didn't want to forget these other pieces. You also would need some 3x5 cards, scissors, and some sort of writing utensil. The alternative is we're also working on a flashcard template, so you wouldn't need to use the scissors and the 3x5 cards if you have the flashcard template. You may need to cut the cards out still, so scissors would still be helpful, but if the flashcard template is accessible, it would be in that box file also, and you'll be able to find it right in there with the vocabulary instruction, word part section, and then you don't need to use the 3x5 cards, so it'll be a little bit simplified. So first of all, the first thing that students have to do is they have to learn the roots themselves. If they don't know the roots, then they can't use them to help them understand new vocabulary words. So that's where the first two handouts come in handy. So using their word part index and the word part group. The group is what's going to tell them what word parts they're working on. And so for each word part, they're going to need one 3x5 card. And so, in this word group number 1 here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they would need 8 3x5 cards. I'm just going to grab a handful here. We don't need to do all of them today, but so you get the idea. They would have 8 cards. And then for each word part there, we're going to cut a card in half. And so we're going to make a set of memory cards. I remember this from preschool. We used to play this memory game where you turn everything over and then you try and find the parts that match. And so the important thing here is using an illustration, again, connecting words with pictures. So you're going to use a picture on both cards to connect the word part and its meaning. So for instance, the word part crawn, I'm going to put on here, crawn. And I'm going to look it up on the index to find its meaning. So we look and we can see there's the C's, there's crawn. Crawn means time. So I'm going to write time. And then while I'm working with the student's actually going to do the writing themselves. And then we're going to talk, I'm going to prompt the student, and you will as the instructor prompt them to think about a picture that they would make for time. And it could be super simple, like a little clock. So maybe here's a clock, they put 12, they put 6, and they show, the hands on the clock. So there's that, and then they want to make sure that they make that illustration to match on the other side. Doesn't really matter where it is on the card, just needs to be on the card and ideally in the same place so that they associate them with that similar visual image. So that's how they're going to make their cards. You're going to continue and make the cards for all of those other word parts. And then you're going to play word part memories. So like I said, let's just pretend we'll cut these in half and we'll just play with these as sample cards. But this game would look like this. And again, it's something students could do on their own. So you want to have them like shuffle the cards, make sure they're not all, together, and turn them upside down. And then they're going to lay them out. And there we go. Yeah, so they can play it by themselves or they can play it with somebody else. And so, you make a little arrangement of the cards, and the game just goes that you're going to turn over, 2 cards at a time. Oh, there we go. So I found one, and then I'm going to see, can I find the match for it? And if you're playing with the whole set, then you'll see you're always turning over a different word. We have lots of blanks in here, so that one wasn't it. So, we turn it over, and then the idea is if you're playing with a partner, the partner gets a turn. So then you turn another one over, we didn't find it, turn another one over, we didn't find it. This shouldn't be that hard, right? I didn't find it. Maybe it's the last one I find. They're right next to each other. So you have your match. So then you do that, and then when you have all the other cards on here, you continue playing until you've finished all of the sets. So that's just the idea. It turns it into something fun and interactive if they play with a peer or a family member or within session with you, and it helps them memorize these word parts. So that's the word part memory game. Then the next step is actually making the word part webs. So for the word part webs, again, we're working on, developing reasoning skills, critical thinking, and you're going to go back to, you don't need the word part index for this, but you're going to go back to the word part exercises and back to that group. And if you look at the group, there's a second step here. It says word webs. Make a word web for each of the following words. So we have synchronize. So let's start with that one. I'll do that one as an example here. And so if we have the word synchronize. Now, I know I have that word part cron in there. I recognize that one. What I also recognize is sin, and I've done a lot of these, so I know most of these word parts by rote, and you'll start to learn them too as you're working with students. It is kind of fun to see how it really does enhance your own vocabulary too. But sin means same. So sin, and you can see over here, I'll just verify that I'm not wrong here, but we can test my memory. Where did that go? Sin, super. Maybe they're not all in order. Looks like I am missing that one, but we will make an edit to this page. You never know what you're going to find in here. So sin means same. Cron means time. And if you have the opportunity, you can throw out to the student that eyes tends to be something that is an action, turns a word into a verb. So if we know that that's a verb, we can put that together, and this is a really good one for doing a prediction. So sin and cron meaning same time. My prediction might be doing something at the same time. So I'll write it out. The student should be writing all of this. Unless you have a handwriting challenge and you can write for them. Ideally they're writing it because you have that neuro memory connection. And then you're going to look it up in the dictionary just to check. And at the end, you're going to do a sentence example. So synchronize does mean to do things at the same time. And so your example might be, we were impressed with the synchronized musicians at the concert. So something like that. Again, talk to your student about the sentence to make sure that it really conveys the meaning. We were impressed with the synchronized musicians. My spelling is not the greatest. Musicians at the concert. So there you go. So that's how you would do a word web. So applications for these. So thinking of reading comprehension, apply to any content area terms that come up in, exercises that you're doing with the student, where the student, might see some roots that you recognize. And thinking of the reading, decoding, and fluency, we're doing a lot of work with chunking syllables, and so making that connection for them of the meanings, especially when we're working on morphemes themselves, and taking those word parts and then putting it together in words that the student can learn that use those morphemes. This is an excellent exercise for it. So I hope you enjoy using these tools. I always have a lot of fun with it, and I like to, let that enthusiasm be magnetic for the student too, to start getting excited about learning words too. And if you ever have any questions, just reach out to your supervisor and we will be happy to help you. Thanks so much.